How's it going today, guys? Thank you again for joining me today. I hope you're enjoying these type of unscripted videos. To be completely honest, I don't even have a topic before I sit down. I kind of just sit in the chair, think for a second about what's on my mind right now, and get to talking. So it's as unscripted as can be, as unplanned as can be, and I hope you guys are taking a liking to it. So jumping right in, the thing most pressing on my mind today is my truth. I don't want to say the truth about entrepreneurship, but my truth surrounding my entrepreneurship journey thus far, and some of what I believe, are misconceptions of, how the journey is, how it's kind of perceived, and all of that good stuff. So first and foremost, I want to focus on, as always, the positives. And that's all you should ever focus on in life, but obviously for the sake of this video, I'm gonna obviously talk about the pros and cons. But the positives are, it's unmatched. As someone who has worked at every level of their respective field, for me in accounting, from being an accounting intern to an accountant to a senior accountant to a controller to a CFO, VP of finance, running something that is your own and quote unquote signing your own paycheck, in reality just wiring yourself money. But being able to sign your own paycheck and have the ability to know that the work you're putting in is going to directly correlate in your own result. So whether that's good or bad, whether you're gonna work 20 hours a day or you're gonna work 3 hours a day, knowing that at the end and when it's all said and done, the end result is going to be reflective on how you perform. There is no department to fall back on. There is no finger to point anywhere else other than yourself. And that can be a pro and a con. I'll probably touch on it both ways, but I think it's a tremendous pro that you have the opportunity to do something that is your own and to create something that is your own and provide opportunities to not only yourself but to perhaps family members or other people is a blessing beyond belief. And that's something that the days where it's toughest, that's what's driven me, to really power through, is the realization of the blessing that is being able to really control your own destiny, which is something that anyone who has either had or is currently in a 9-to-5 would know. That isn't the case when you're not the boss and you don't make the end result at the end of the day. Some other pros are flexibility of schedule. Now I'll go into how you can kind of ruin that for yourself, because I did that for a nice window and I'm finally getting out of it. But if it's a random Tuesday and you're like, hey, I'm gonna go rock a game of tennis, or I'm gonna go for a hike today, having the ability to kind of pick up and go and not needing to say ask someone permission or use some PTO or anything like that is a tremendous flexibility, which is something that I've taken full advantage of whenever possible. A couple other pros of entrepreneurship that I've personally really taken a liking to. This one kind of goes with the you kind of control your own destiny, but it's the uncapped potential of your life and your situation. Say hi to Crystal. She is not one to share the spotlight. So really controlling your own destiny and having the ability to kind of have uncapped potential. No matter what job you're in or what role you're in, at some point, whether it be your schooling. So for me, as an accountant, I was able to, as I said, grow from an accounting intern to, a CFO, VP of finance, without having things such as, say, a master's or a CPA accreditation or anything else like that. But I was kind of capped off at businesses, between maybe $100 million, maybe $250 million a year. But when you start to get to, say, the big conglomerates where their CFOs can make, upwards of millions of dollars, you're going to, need basically every sort of, letter combination, every sort of degree, every sort of accreditation that, you could possibly have next to your name, unless you are the owner. So that kind of, full circle, or the founder, that kind of proves the point that I was going after is, in the workplace, at some point, you will hit a level or a ceiling. And with a business, really there isn't one. And I know you can hear that and maybe make an argument that at some point, there's no more businesses to sell accounting to, or at some point, there's no more businesses that need media services or marketing or this or that. I suppose, but the fact of the matter is, I think as Jeff Bezos is proving, you're probably never gonna hit it. Like his goal is probably to sell to every single person in the world, and he isn't there yet. They're still growing, so I suppose everything has a ceiling and everything has a limitation, but for as far as all of us are concerned, I don't think, in our short lifespan we'll ever do enough to, truly reach it, because we just don't have the time to. So for the sake of this point, I don't believe, that you really have a ceiling. You have really uncapped potential to what you can achieve. And yeah, I'll leave that as the last and final. I'll say, real perk to entrepreneurship. And I said the flexibility earlier, but that also means like flexibilities for vacations, this and that, when stuff grows and you hire and all that good stuff. But I'm really not there yet, to be completely honest. So while I know that there probably are other pros that people will point out, hey, you forgot to mention this, I'm just speaking from my experience and where I'm at today. So I guess rolling into the cons of entrepreneurship up to this point is, at every role that I've been in, I would consider myself to be dedicated, is the word I'll use. I have a reputation for being the first person in the office and being the last person to leave every day, to always trying to think above and beyond, even when I was an accounting intern, of what I can do to provide value, of how I can, best service my employer. But at the end of the day, you still clock out and you go home. And no matter what kind of gets you down, now I realize there's personality types that maybe, you take your work home. I was always pretty good at no matter what happened at the office. At the end of the day, you wipe your hands clean of it, you go home and you enjoy, your wife, you enjoy, the animals, you enjoy your friends, whatever. And then there's the weekend, you have, all of this off time per se. That was something that I didn't realize. I don't want to use the word miss as much. And for me, it was never time off. So when I would go home from, my 9 to 5, I would work on every second accounts. Before every second accounts, when I would go home from work, I was a full-time student. And even before that, when I was a full-time student in high school, I would go to work and I was a full-time employee at night. So my examples aren't that of going home and relaxing even, just to add the real preference or real reality of what I'm really getting across here. It was the freedom and separation of focusing on one thing all of the time, and only one thing. So like, say if I was working the 9 to 5 and then coming home working on every second accounts, for me, even though it was both accounting, I was completely shifting my mindset. Now I was in, founder mode, and I was in, growth mode, and client, and client relations and marketing and sales and all of that stuff, where it allowed for me to put another hat on and get, that second wind every day. That's not the case anymore as it stands. I don't want to make that sound like it's a, forever thing, but for me, I've been so head down in the company and in the day-to-day work that I haven't had, the opportunity to take my cap off, every day, or put that second cap on and even focus on, say, the growth of the company, and, put the first half of the day towards the work and the second half of the day towards, growth and sales and all this stuff, where then I can have a different, that second jump of motivation, or whatever you want to call it. I haven't had that, and I didn't realize how important that was to me until really a couple months back, when I just started to feel, for the first time in my entire career, life, and before you say, well, you're young, what do you know? I have been in the field for 7 to 8 years. So, I mean, yes, I'm not 30 years in or this or that, but I made it a fairly substantially long way without ever feeling that. And I really came down to the source of that being the reason why. I was never able to really take myself out of it from, 6 a.m. every day until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I've been head down in making sure that, the day-to-day work is taken care of, that the clients are happy, that the emails are answered, that I've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's that I needed to. But I left no room for, I suppose, the imagination to take over, where you can dream, and where you can, focus on growth and focus on, improving the company and all of the other stuff that I've really found that I'm longing for, to kind of go back to. And it really led to a poor mental situation where, I started questioning a lot of stuff. I mean, I left a nice sum of money on the table to pursue every second accounts full time. And that's not even including, needing to pay for my own health insurance, not having, 401k matches and all that stuff that you kind of take for granted in the 9 to 5 world. But I kind of had, like, you go through those nights sometimes where I'd lay in bed and be like, man, I could just apply to a job tomorrow. And if I started, man, it would just be, I could focus on just one job. Like, I just have one person to please, which leads me into what my next con is, and what I believe is actually the biggest misconception of entrepreneurship, at least in a service-based industry or company such as mine. Everyone always tells me It must be so nice to be your own boss. I could not disagree anymore with that perception of a service-based entrepreneur, because right now under the Every Second Accounts roster, we have 35 clients, roughly. I am not my own boss. I do not have one boss, as my peers who make these comments say, or leave comments on, my posts. I have 35 bosses who fully expect and deserve that type of relationship response from me on a day-to-day, on an hour-to-hour, and on a minute-to-minute basis, which can be tough and it can be exhausting. Sometimes, if you're at the office and the boss is gone, maybe you have that weight lifted off your shoulders. I've never, been that type of person. It is impossible for me to have 35 people off on a day. And I shouldn't say that that's a con, because I thoroughly enjoy working with all of the founders and all of the, owners and employees and all of the people that I do. But I think it's a misconception that really needs addressing, because it couldn't be further from the truth. Diving into other cons, I think people look, and I'm not saying this to go political or really economical, but people look at founders or CEOs and owners on this pedestal of, well, they have it easy, or, they have a lot of money, they don't understand, like the day-to-day work, or they don't comprehend, or it must be easy and must be nice. I don't think people who aren't in entrepreneurship can understand and shouldn't understand, because they've never done it, what saying that truly means. And what I mean by that is, when you're growing something, you're putting everything that you have on the line. Now, I'm blessed and fortunate that, I'm not, in debt. I haven't taken out loans. The business runs on its own. But at the end of the day, even now the employees that I've hired, and you can quit and go find something new. And not saying that I couldn't. But when you're building something that is your own, you don't have that, if a client is in service or the boss is mad, or, or if the boss is mad, or if you have an off day, at the office and it's a Friday and you just, hey, trust me, I've been there too. I'm just gonna phone it in today. I'm gonna watch some videos. I might send a few emails here and there, but man, I'm checked out. You can't have those days. And you have so much on your shoulders on a day-to-day basis when you're working to grow something. And I don't think people put enough focus on the small businesses or owners who have grown companies from the ground up, and really appreciate the stresses that they've endured on that journey. It's very easy to look at, and I'm nowhere near, a multimillionaire, like any of that stuff. But I know even places that I would work for, hearing the way people would talk about, the owners and stuff and this and that. Well, they, sit in their ivory tower or this or that, or they don't even focus on the business and they take home X. And yeah, but at some point in time, they had everything on the line. And that's something that you as an employee have never done, probably will never do, and for that reason can never comprehend. So to speak on it is pretty irresponsible, is the way I would put it. And I'm seeing that now more than ever. I've always been a big advocate for the ownership at any place that I've worked, but as I said, now more than ever understanding just what goes into trying to build anything, much less something substantial where you can then provide those opportunities, employment opportunities to other people. And I don't think that gets enough press, because if you look at a situation of, say, an owner, and you think they've got it easy, they made this, and they make this a year, and, they don't do this work or whatever, you want to throw on it. You also don't see the other 99% of owners who failed to get there. So I think people look at, owners, CEOs, and founders as, I don't want to say as like the enemy or, as the opposition or anything like that, but kind of through like this lens of, well, the grass is greener, and not realizing how much truly goes into it and how hard it actually is to get to that level, and how talented that person must have been to get the business to that point. And if they're not today showcasing it, they are one of the few that actually made it and actually gets to, live in that luxury, or whatever you perceive that luxury to be, because you still don't know what's going on, with it at the end of the day, or with them at the end of the day in their own situations. So I'll cap that off with that. Some of the other, and I feel like I'm focusing a ton on cons, but as I said, I'm always going to shoot it straight, and I've been I'll use the word tired. This is crunch time of the year for me. But the other con, I think, is when you have your own business, your own thing, it's really all you focus on. And for me, I've really taken a sidestep, towards focusing on health, towards focusing on relationships, towards focusing on doing things that I enjoy. Not that, COVID didn't impact all of that, some of that regardless, but I've really taken put all that to the side to, go head down into the business. Like, if you watch my content consistently, or just scroll, back to, a year ago on whatever feed you're watching this on, I've gained about 20 pounds, in the past 6 months. I literally played a one-on-one basketball game against my brother, and I was seeing yellow, I was seeing red. I played a simple one-on-one game to 21. A year and a half ago, I was the person on the court calling everyone else out for wanting to stop after playing a dozen games, and that's no exaggeration. It's nuts to realize, just how much I've traded and how much I wasn't realizing in the moment I was trading to go after this, which I think is a necessity. Don't get me wrong. Like, at the end of the day, your performance is the only thing that's ever going to dictate, your outcome, as I said earlier, which is the biggest pro, but it can be the biggest con if you don't know how to, handle it, or if you don't like that pressure. So knowing that, I've been as head down as can be. I probably, in hindsight, should have hired employees. I have them starting next week, but I probably should have hired people 6 months ago. But I'm a first-time entrepreneur. I'm obviously, as I've talked about before, a very anal accountant who needs to make sure that all the, T's are crossed and I's are dotted in any situation, because I live in that entrepreneur, kind of stigma that no one's going to do it. No one's going to do anything as well as me, so I've got to have my hands in everything. And really, the only reason I'm even able to talk about this from a little bit higher view, like, I'm not even looking at my company today from a 10,000 foot view. Like, I've been from a 10-foot view, now maybe at a 100 or 1,000-foot view. And the only reason I'm actually able to have this conversation is, I think, because I've made the decision to hire those employees, and I see finally a light at the end of the horizon where I can go back to, feeling that excitement, feeling that passion, and, just really taking ESA to the next 1,000 levels to where I know it's going to go. But I think it's interesting to kind of do this type of self-reflection on it. And as I said, if you caught me on a different day, the pros would be a ton longer. But if you can't tell, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I'm nearing the end of what I would deem to be, I don't even know what chapter of ESA this is. I would say chapter 1 was me, just having it for a while. Chapter 2 was me going and pursuing it. Chapter 3 was me going, was pursuing it like for real, like trying to, actually realize I've got something going on and let's do it. Chapter 3, I would say, is going to it full time. And now this is chapter 4 of Every Second Accounts, which is, hey, we can hire, and this is something real. We can, I think, substantially grow and build this into, it's something real, but I think we can build it into something real. But with that has come a lot of lessons learned, a lot of up days, great amount of down days. And yeah, this is just a little self-reflection of that. So I hope this kind of brought some clarity, at least from one man's perspective, for those of you out there still watching and still following, for that I thank you, of the truth into entrepreneurship. And I'll close by saying the grass is still always greener. And I just talked for, say it's 24 minutes in, 25 minutes in. I probably talked for 5 minutes about pros and 20 about cons. But at the end of the day, if I would go back and sit in an office, at least in my current being and situation tomorrow, I would feel like I failed, and I would feel like I didn't give it enough, because I know the opportunity at hand here, and I would probably feel comfort in that role for 2 to 3 months, and then I would have the same feeling of, I've got to grow ESA, and I would go home and I would just start that process over again, and not from square one, because obviously now I've learned some things along the way. But I would absolutely circle back, because this ride is far from over. And if I have it my way, it'll be a ride that carries me to the next lifetime. But hopefully a little bit of insight, and I'm sure this won't get as many views as, my video where I stand next to my pool, or, next to, the house or anything like that, or talk about the glories of, how exciting entrepreneurship is and how to land clients and sales and all the stuff that, gets the clicks and gets the views, but I think is hollow motivation, because this is the reality of it. So not to focus on cons from a perspective of complaining, but to focus on the cons from a perspective of reality for those of you watching, so you can actually know what to anticipate, and hopefully learn a thing or two on how to avoid some of the missteps that I may have taken up to this point. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I tremendously appreciate it. Hope you all have a blessed day, and we'll talk again soon.